Meeting of the Greenways Open Space Committee. We will call this meeting to order at 7:08. Okay, would we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Oh, Theresa made it. Good. Very good. Okay. How you doing? Good. That's fine. Oh, we're good. You got enough? Everybody have agendas and minutes?
Yep.
Teresa's got some. We're good.
What did I do with my pencil?
Drop your coat. Okay. First off, welcome in this rainy, cold spring, but I'm sure summer will be here soon enough, certainly by June and July, we hope, if not sooner, but I heard this weekend, and we're hoping for good weather for this weekend, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But are there any additions or deletions to the agenda as presented? None? Hearing none? I'll do the roll call. St. Pierre?
Here.
Urbani?
Here.
Weeks?
Here.
Mr. Geis is at a track meet. Pam Frucci, is she back from her global tour? I don't know yet. Anybody hear from Pam? No. Ms. Phillips?
Here.
Talaba? No. Mr. Bloetscher?
Aye.
Great. Okay. May I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Weeks,
Second.
second by Mr. St. Pierre. Any discussion? All those in favor of approval of the agenda as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Good. We have no presentations this evening unless somebody wants to do an impromptu presentation that we're aware of. No? I will then, if you take a look at the approval of the minutes from our April 4th meeting, so if you haven't already done so, to take a look at the minute meetings from our April 4th meeting.
So, Bill, on the minutes, motion to add discussion item 5 to the agenda for the ribbon cutting for,
Yes,
what is the date? Is that the date on here?
on
Is it
June
down-
10th? Yeah, June 10th at 1 o'clock.
Oh,
I
okay.
think we
Maybe
agreed.
it's somewhere. I think I have seen it.
That was an addition, but also it was approved.
Okay.
We're again hoping for good weather for that. I would like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes of our April 4th, 2023 meeting.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Bloetscher. Second by Mr. Urbani. Any discussion? Any further discussion? All those in favor of approval of the minutes of April 4, say aye.
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 Opposed? Great. We have a couple action items rather than just discussions that we will still have some discussion items. And through our discussions that we have been having for the past several years, we are, in our history, we've been looking to improve the trails and maintain the trails as we have. And we know one of our biggest challenges is balancing use of the public and the sensitive ecosystems many times that we are dealing with and going through. So one of the things I think that it behooved us to do was to obviously get to a point to say, well, rather than just say, oh, we need a culvert here, or we should do this here, that I would like to look and ask and request the township board and the township to do a formal engineering study of the hydrology of, particularly of the Meridian Woods area and the trail, because we do know that that is a state protected and obviously our protected vernal wetland, and that if what we're trying to do, and we've had discussion about, you know, the water that needs to flow naturally through that area so that we don't kill all the trees in the area by, you know, making a path so that it can't move. So I thought it would do this committee, at least looking at our budget that we have, and that we have, you know, if we have to adjust the budget, we can make that adjustment, but it's under our maintenance budget, that we would look to a request of the township to do a like a formal study by an engineering firm. Rather, I think either Rains that the township has used, you know, for years, or there's Manick and Smith out of Monroe. I know that we've used in you know, and I've used in other circumstances. I think the Nature Conservancy has. I guess that's where we're at. And so I would entertain some, first off, a motion, if you think that that's but certainly some discussion as to that, and then perhaps a motion. So any ideas or any thoughts?
So is this for, Bill, is it for a study, to request the study?
Yes.
For a culvert?
Yes.
Okay. Seems reasonable.
And not only just the study, but I also would like to think if it's an engineering study, you're just going to say, oh, you know, oh, that's a wetlands. But no, what we want to do is that what kinds of culverts or what type, and maybe it shouldn't be in the place that we think. Maybe it should be somewhere else that could divert the water, you know, naturally. Okay, you know, that's I'm trying to, rather than doing sometimes the guesswork that we have done, or to just go ahead. Yeah, that's a great idea. Let's do this. I think we do need some, you know, we need some scientific input on that, and I think it's within, you know, within reason. You take a look at a lot of the construction that's already gone into, you know, across the street, or if I'm going down to Gibraltar, I know there's, and I'm looking at all these massive drain systems that they're putting in down there near Humbug Marsh, which is very sensitive wetlands protected by the federal government. You know, what kinds of things are they doing right across the street? I can't, you know, so I'm looking, we should be able to do something like that. So any, yeah, go ahead.
I just want to make sure, in other words, what you want is an engineering study of what should be done on the trail system for Meridian Woods, is that correct?
Yes. Particularly. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, the Ferry Woods Trail still has maybe some issues, but again, I don't know if it necessarily warrants that type of a study because it's already in pretty good shape and it's ready to go in that regard. Whereas the Meridian's Woods, we almost constantly, do we not, have this issue about not maybe 100 yards in or so that there's water, and we do know in past years what we've done is that there are areas that are underwater, significant amount of water throughout many months of the year that we just simply said to people, hey, we're just going to cordon that off. This trail is closed. I mean, that's not hard to do, to put some signs up or put you know, some roping up or something to prevent people from going there. That, you know, whether or not they do or not, it's another story, not do it. But I'm just thinking we're at that point where I think we really need to look at this, and, you know, and it may be to a point where, like, okay, we're just going to have to live with it, and, you know, we, you know, forge through it.
Well, I agree. I think we should do.
Mike, there you go.
Excuse me. I think we should do a thorough engineering study of the Meridian Trail, and then, based on the findings, make a decision as to do we implement these recommendations, excuse me, or what do we do?
Yes.
So I would favor a thorough engineering study of the Meridian Trails.
Okay. Carl or Bert, either?
Bert?
Yeah, I agree that we need a study so that we don't just do something that's incomplete or that will show up in the future, you know, that it wasn't successful.
Right.
And I think the Fairy Woods will probably need another season or two to figure out how that trail is functioning and how the water is moving through there.
Right. Good, Carl?
Yeah, I think Ferry is a different set of circumstances in that the township just paid to have a ditch or ditching project done to relieve some of the water that was flowing onto Island Boulevard and all of the yards and the backyards in particularly on the south side. So I think, Bert, your point is well taken. That's going to take some time to flesh out. Meridian is much different. It seems like most of the areas that we have are different and for a whole host of reasons. When we look at the north end with the wildlife sanctuary, there really is nothing nearby and impacting the trails. That's pretty elevated and straightforward. We look at the Ferry Gauge Trail. That's new. There was some ditching that was done along the new trail, as well as ditching that was done just south of Island, so that presents some different circumstances. And then when we look at Meridian Woods, we have, I believe it's called a vernal wetland that is defined as having wetland characteristics during particularly the springtime. That is a state-recognized wetland, and that is one obvious problem that we have because the water is either rising or too low depending upon the time of year and depending upon the amount of water that is there. But we also have an area on the very northwest end of Meridian Woods where we've had complaints from neighbors who have had flooding in their yard and claim that it's killing trees, and it may or may not be. So I think we go from the wildlife sanctuary in the north end, which has no issues, Ferry, which may have some issues, and then we look at Meridian Woods, and we have two areas in there, the trail that's already in existence, and then the possibility of damage being done to trees on neighboring properties as well as our own because the water is standing there and simply drowning them. So I think it would be very, very important for us to have someone come in, request a RFP for the township, request for proposal, or even a request for a quote to see what we can do. And I think it is incumbent upon this committee as a steward of Greenways open space to manage it appropriately. We could certainly go in and dig a culvert or a ditch and drain the vernal wetland area, and what have we accomplished? I think it's the very antithesis of what we're supposed to be doing. At the same time, I'd like to have the neighbors on the north end of Meridian Woods understand that we are serious about managing our property, so if there is some flooding that's been caused by what has transpired within the Meridian Woods, I'd certainly be interested in knowing that. I suspect it may be a very unhappy combination of grades having been put in place and perhaps some areas not having been maintained as they had historically.
Right.
And I think it wouldn't be incumbent upon us to go ahead and try and find out what we should do and then find a way to do it.
Good.
And those are the only three I can think of right now where
Right.
we have an issue.
I agree. Any, Theresa? We good? Or you have some thoughts?
Well, I guess my thoughts are somebody needs to be the devil's advocate on this topic, and so I mean, engineering studies aren't cheap, and I mean, one thought is to instead of spending the money on an engineering study, is to just leave the property as it is and build your trail system above where you know it floods out at. So, I mean, that's you see that up north in a lot of trails that go through wetland type material, where they have low bridges put in through the whole system. So you don't disturb, you don't walk on the grounds, and you don't disturb its originality. But just a thought.
Oh, I think that's a very good thought. Mandy, have any comment or no?
I think as long as the township will pay for a study, considering our funds, to do a study for whether or not a culvert can be installed there, I think it would be great.
Well,
Or put some bridges in.
right, I don't think, and I think that's what a study would do for us, okay? And I realize, that there is gonna be an expense, but I also, the study might come back and say, they can give us several options. Number one, they might say, hey, why don't you build a bridge, okay? Let you leave that alone, because, as you walk down the bike path and you come to certain areas that are wetlands, okay? One right off the thoroughfare canal, for example, is, that's open space property there that's adjacent to the thoroughfare canal that's there. Also, there's right by the Meridian Woods as you're walking, okay, or riding your bike or whatever. There's a bridge there that obviously is over, in a wetlands in that spot, okay? So, as there are others. So I'm not, and Theresa, your point's extremely well taken about, but I think a study, rather than saying, okay, let's go get the materials and just put the culvert in, I think we need to, maybe look at more options. And I think that, I guess, cost or not, I think it's something, that we need to look to. And perhaps the township and, but I think we want to make the formal request that comes from this group. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Well, I know that there are plenty of places in Michigan and even in the Refuge Gateway that have boardwalks through wetlands.
Right.
And those aren't cheap either, but they really do solve the problem. But I think it has to be identified, exactly where and how to put it in.
Right.
So,
I mean, that's the whole intention. So at least can we, I guess the motion would be to look at an engineering study of the Meridian Woods and make for recommendations. You might want to, if the for culvert placements might be different, you might want to use different language on the motion.
and I think we should get proposals from firms that are experienced in this regard.
Yes.
I mean, an engineering study can be by somebody who builds a road versus somebody who knows how to send out a request for proposals for an environmental engineering study for Meridian Woods to determine the proper way to travel through there. And the proper, well, I mean, this is still too wordy, so somebody else can shrink it, but
So we're looking at a request for an environmental engineering study of Meridian Woods, keep hydrology for proper travel through wetlands or proper trail development,
Yeah, proper installation of trails.
proper installation of trail. Is that okay?
Whatever that would take,
All right.
I'm going to say environmental protection, or is that too redundant?
Redundant. I would
I'm
think.
looking at move for a RFP/RFQ to assess the need for environmental action regarding hydraulic. For proper installation of, we were calling it hydraulic.
Traverses,
That would be fine.
hydraulic traverses. Okay, we can do that.
I'll second that.
Okay,
Well done.
so motion by Mr. Bonnie, supported by Mr. Bloetscher. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. Phew. Nextly, Carl, you want to take that one? That was, I think, your original, at least.
Yes, this is the area that has been designated or labeled as grubbed out from the last year's work on the water lines along Meridian. And Mr. Stevenson and Ms. Urbani and myself and Mr. Geist went back to take a look at the property. I'd previously been back there with Township Manager Derek Thiel, as well as Township Supervisor Budney. It seems that that is an area that could easily be accessed and trail used and completed, built, completed and maintained. There was about 650, almost 700 feet from the road back to the area we were looking at. Coincidentally, the township is going through and doing a storm sewer assessment. There is a storm sewer back there that I understand is 70 years old and needs to be examined and frankly rebuilt because the bricks are coming out. In order to do the study, the assessment, the township the township has to have a camera truck go back there. In order to do that appropriately, they have to throw down gravel to build a kind of a makeshift bed in order to get the truck back there and, more importantly, get it out once it is there. That gravel would be an excellent base for a trail that we could use. The difficulty is that it is very, very hard looking at the area without having some kind of survey stakes or other kind of markers as to where the township property begins and ends vis-a-vis the property to the north and to the south, and I'm speaking generally, that are open space properties. So what John Keim has done is to put a bed of gravel down for probably the first 100 or 150 feet, and the question now becomes, where are they building? Where will we build a trail? And that is, would it be just solely on open space greenways, or would it be partially on township property? And I think what we need to do is to have some definition with that. And I'm confident that Margie Gape could probably give us some help on that, as well as Derek Thiel with his township community development department, as well as John Keim, who is very experienced with the entire, probably every square foot of Gros Isle. So what I'm hoping that we could do tonight would be to indicate to the township that it is a consensus of this committee that we would like to move forward and come up with a design for a trail and perhaps an overlook there. My understanding is if there is a floating dock, it's not a required project to be permitted, and something that would give some access to an overlook there for the canal and even fishing or something like that. Right now, the only other areas we have that are similar to that would be Sunrise Park at the foot of Parkway and perhaps Water's Edge Marina. And it would be nice if we could perhaps do something there that's a short trail, easily built and well-maintained. And the time is excellent for two reasons. They're putting the gravel back there for the truck to come and go. And we have a ton of wood chips right now, which is
The understatement of the century.
two real cost-saving measures on this. And I'm of the mind, if we're going to do something, let's make it happen as opposed to being reactive.
I
Let's
agree.
be proactive.
I agree. Thank you.
That was my interest in putting that on the agenda for tonight, and I'm hoping that we can get support for a request for the board to allow us to use, to the extent that there is a need, to use that township-owned property between the two segments of Greenways open space.
Here's a
ahead.
question.
Okay.
Carl,
Yes, ma'am.
because I didn't go the other day, where is the Greenways open space? Where is it around this parking area? Is it to the west, to the north is the canal, right?
To the northwest is the canal. The canal runs maybe at a 30-degree angle,
Yeah,
something
kind of
like
an
that.
angle up to
Yeah,
the bridge.
it's not a 45, it's probably 30 or 25.
So the open space property is to the west of the parking lot?
No, actually,
Or of this area of the
Actually-
parking?
if I may interrupt.
The gravel is-
Actually, it's to the north area, adjacent to the thoroughfare canal, and to the south. And so the township property is kind of interspersed in between. So when we were looking at all these plot maps that we've looked at, like, past last July, those areas were kind of mapped out, and so it's almost like a little checkerboard. And there were
Okay.
like 4 properries that were township, but also open space kind
Open
of
space
surrounds
and
it. Okay,
interspersed
right, right.
around this.
Right.
Okay.
So it's a question of, what we're looking for is access to our open space through township property.
Okay.
It is difficult if you, Ms. Phillips, if you and I were to look at a map, it has longitudes running, north-south and latitudes running east-west. The canal kind of runs at a 30-degree northeast-southwest angle, and the properties are a little,
Right.
they're not true north, they're not true south. You could say that they might share a northern border and a southern border, but there's no great way of labeling them.
Which
with-
is which?
Exactly, and therein lies the problem.
I have, yeah.
Right.
There, in going back there, we found
Thanks.
that there are a significant number of phragmites that
In there too, of course.
extend from
Need to get rid
what
of.
we would consider, or probably should be considered as upland. Phragmites are in various depths, and by depths I mean running from the canal to the upland. In some places, it might only be 8 to 10 feet. Other places, it might be 25 or 30. And frankly, I got tired of stepping in water and mud and risking embarrassing myself with an ice fall. So the further south we went along the canal, if you look at that area and you could just bisect it with a line, when we went south of that line, going generally southwest, the Phragmites and the wetland, the wet area, wetland is defined by the type of plants that are there, as you know, that if you go the further south, the further these Phragmites extend out into the canal, and it's just very shallow, and that's going to change as the levels of the lakes and the rivers change. So we were looking upland, if you will, closer to the north side, so that we would be able to get closer. And the only drawback on that was that is where that manhole sewer outlet is. And you talk about an eyesore, it's positively eye-popping as an eyesore. But there was some construction that was done back there. I believe back when the sewer lines were put in, the storm sewers and that were put in the 1960s. So there are some mounds, there's some debris back there, but when we looked at that with Manager Thiel, he indicated that those would have to be knocked down anyway to get the truck in there to make the trail flatter and access for that. So there's no good way of defining where township is and where Greenways open space is.
Got it.
I hope
Thank
that
you,
answers
Carl.
your-
That-
hope that answers your
That
question.
helps a lot.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I would like to make the motion to use the township the request for the use of township property in the Lowry Cutout, which again, the west side of Meridian, 200 feet or so south of Lowry, for parking, trail access, and Greenways open space use.
Second.
Second by Mr. Bloetscher. Any further discussion? All those in favor of that motion for use of township property in the Lowry Cutout, say aye.
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 Opposed? Any abstentions? Good. Okay, thank you. So I will be contacting Derek Thiel tomorrow, township manager, and relay our requests for the environmental engineering study and our use of township property. And then we'll keep everyone apprised of that.
Has there been discussion like a kayak access or something?
Might be
Might be.
in the future, right?
They were trying to do it, I think, in that area about 20 years ago.
Right.
Yeah, Ms. Phillips, if you look at the area just a little bit north of that, Peter Kantz had proposed putting a kayak launch
In there.
in there similar to the,
Yeah.
not far from the area right now. And that was, that did not move forward, but there is a soft launch at Water's Edge right by the bridge.
True.
So that's
That's true.
probably a half a mile downstream from what we're talking about.
Right.
And,
Yeah, and access downstream too from
Right.
there.
right.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, okay, that would be great. All
And
right.
the other thing is if we were to put the kayak launch in there, you're going to expect that there may be some feedback from some neighbors,
Yes.
whereas the canal is a buffer with respect to people that are walking back there or fishing or using it as an overview. I think the general consensus is that last thing you want to do is to wake up with a couple of drunken sailors on your lawn in the morning, so,
In kayaks. Right.
you know, kayaks or
All right.
canoes or whatever,
Drunken
so.
kayak,
Drunken
kayak
kayakers.
paddlers.
Not good. Good. Okay. Anything on that? Well, as we know, this coming Saturday, May 6th, is our second of our events for, actually, it's the first for this year, but it's going to be one of two, for our Dump the Junk, Find the Treasure. And from 9 o'clock to 4 o'clock at the DPS yard on Grow Road, 9555 Grow Road. And I know there have been some signs that we put out just yesterday and reminding people. There was an article in the Grosse Grand, I know, that was there. Brian Friel put on the Township website that this is an event. So tell your family, friends, and loved ones, or whomever, your neighbors, that yes, we're having this, rain or shine. Hopefully it's going to be shiny. But we're having the Dump the Junk, Find a Treasure from 9 to 4. What I'm asking this group, as I have in the past, or we all have had in the past, are some volunteer efforts there. So if you're able to, I'll circulate it through maybe an email, like some times, or if you want to shoot me an email, say, yeah, I can show up from this time to this time, or if you want to bring the chief or somebody of that nature, we can, we can do that. We also are following up at the end of the day at about 3:30, going on 4 o'clock, the Cass Community Services from downtown Detroit are going to come. The Reverend Sue Patu is bringing a big box truck that at the end of the day for the Find the Treasures that they will go through, and we'll hopefully load that up and get that to needy and people who would like that in the city of Detroit and their services that they do. So any question about that or any discussion about Dump the Junk? But again, I'll get an email out to people and spread the word. And it's been a very successful. We're trying to coordinate, and I'll put a plug in. I know St. James Episcopal Church is doing a rummage sale starting Thursday, Friday,
And Saturday.
and part of Saturday. They stop at noon on Saturday. And I do know, I have spoken to some folks there, that if they have some perfectly good, usable items that could go to Cass Community Services that day, that they should maybe also bring
Yeah,
them, okay, rather
Right.
than just discard it or put it in a dumpster.
Great.
Because that's one of the worst
Excellent.
things that we want to
I
do.
suggested that to them that. they
Yes,
do
I
that.
did too.
Glad you thought
I
to-
did too. Okay.
Very good.
So-
I think it bears saying that, and a reminder that this is not just a dump the junk project, but some of the materials that, as we worked on the last couple of years, I mean, Bill, I just remember some of the furniture was first class and was very good and would be able to be used successfully. Habitat for Humanity, Cass Corridor,
Oh,
a
right,
lot of different
right.
places. So it's not just junk.
Oh, no, no.
When you look at the treasures, that might be a bit tongue-in-cheek, but that is also something that is very valuable to those that are less fortunate and more in need. And hats off to the church for doing their stuff.
A
That is
habitat.
wonderful.
Yes, no, very much so. Yep. Good. Anything else on dump the junk?
Just to clarify, so Cass Community Services, they're coming just to us, they're not going to St.
No,
James
they're
first?
coming just to us. Yep. At least, I don't know, I don't think they've made any other,
They were, I assume now they're coming to St. James, but not the same day. Not on Saturday. I think it's in a week, week later they come to St. James. Something like that.
I do know that, we've
Right.
penciled them in, we put it in ink very early on, and that we went back to them, and this year they said, oh, no, we need your.
I'll double check on
Yeah,
that tomorrow. but
on the
I'm
treasures.
Sure that's right.
Yes.
Mandy, I understand Alice Kerrigan has a basement where you can store stuff for a week or two if you need to.
She's running that place.
One of the burdens of being the chair. She
Yeah.
and Blanche, I think.
Yes, that's funny.
So I saw some furniture at the curb on East River, on Sunday and Monday, and I was disappointed to see that. So, I don't know if we're just not getting the word out to people that just a few days later you could take it to dump the junk or what, but.
I don't know. I mean, the Grosio Grand article goes to every household in the city. So whether you read it or not, it's another story. But again, for the thousands of you that are watching on, television this evening, please, take advantage of this great opportunity. It's not only a great humanitarian, but environmental aspect. That's why Open Space Greenways is doing it in the first place.
You actually have some pretty good writers for that paper, Bill.
I don't know. Yes. Thank you.
Kudos to the writer.
The next one is the adopt the plot rollout. And again, this doesn't have to necessarily be, but we've talked about this, and mainly this came about by, there were some requests by citizens at one point to put like a little library on in one of the near or on one of the open space areas, and in and of itself, that's an absolutely noble idea. As a former educator, and some of you are also, we know the importance of literacy, and we're not trying to discourage that. But again, whether it's an appropriate use of open space or should be in open space is another question, because we're governed by some pretty strict regulations and bylaws and ordinances too. But by the same token, people were also saying, well, we could help, or it's a great day, we can go do this. And I know the Nature Conservancy does this on looking for volunteers, like to do cleanups, or they had the island cleanup recently. But I guess our vision is that what we would do is we would have different community groups, whether it be the Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or Kiwanis or Rotary or that, be responsible for our assistance, because I think we've all figured out by now that we can't do it by ourselves. Our maintenance budget is limited. DPS, as much, we have so many wood chips that are, that maybe need to be spread. It's just, it gets to be, we want to manage this wisely, and so that's one of the things we're trying to do. So, so I put it on the agenda, and I believe Bert and Theresa, I think at one point there was some, like we were moving forward, and then, I just know, I think I just want to make this more towards the, to the forefront, put it on a front burner rather than a back burner. So, is there any discussion about that, about how we'd like to roll this out, or when we'd like to roll this out, or, I know we're doing dump the junk right now, and then we're gonna have one more meeting in June, then after that, we won't meet over the summer. But, what are your thoughts on that? Because this is a discussion point, it's not an action item.
Want to try it for June?
I don't know, do you think we're able and ready to
would
roll
you
this
wanna
out in
hold
June, or put the word out at least?
Teresa, you want to work on this over the summer? And,
I can. I just, for, I think I'm feeling as though it would be nice to get a group established first, and then define it from there. That might be the easiest way to roll it out. Once you have, you pick a plot and you pick, a group, and then go see how it would work. That might be a way to do it.
So are you saying, okay, let's use the Boy Scouts as an example. So Troop 1261, which is the local GROSSE branch, we would approach them and say, hey, why don't, we know at one time you guys did a great job in terms of cleaning up the area off of East River, okay, that we knew was a real eyesore, and that they did clean that up, and that also kind of facilitated the pathway now that we have there because of that cleanup, that we would approach them as maybe like a prototype or a pilot and see how they would do it. And again, I think our idea is it's something like, okay, you would pick a Saturday, or you'd pick a day during a month that your group would gather, and basically it's your responsibility. Okay, you go and pick up the trash, or you go and if there's a tree falling down, you make that known, and you make that identified. If there's encroachments, you would say, hey, wait a minute, the guy's got his truck.
good.
He's got his truck in open space. You shouldn't have it there. I
It'd be
mean,
really good for a group to, good for the group to monitor encroachments on the open space.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I hadn't thought,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe the Girl Scouts.
Yeah, I mean, you can, once you have a particular group, then what's going to happen is you're going to have to identify what they have the abilities to do and not,
Right.
and not do.
Right.
And then, so, I mean, you could allow them the freedom to do whatever they wanted in terms of falling within the guidelines of
Right.
the open space bylaws, in terms of if they wanted to do a cleanup once a month, or they wanted to do suggestions of laying chips or whatever they needed to do. And it's going to vary from group to group, and it's going to vary based on the abilities within the group.
Right.
So you kind of gotta let it do its own freedom. But I think when you start with one group, you're gonna start finding out how you need to develop the plan, and
Right.
to give them the guidance to stay within the the lines of the road, so to speak.
Right. Good. Bert, you had a comment? Or?
Well, I think it's going to be hard to get this organized. The Conservancy has been successful working on some badging programs with the Girl Scouts, and we had some Girl Scouts out on Earth Day as part of the Kiwanis cleanup. We haven't had much luck with the high school environmental awareness club, and so we can try and reach out to them and the National Honor Society. The neighbors that border open space, they have a vested interest in seeing the property maintained. Sometimes that leads to encroachment.
Right.
In terms of monitoring, basically all of us have some property assigned, and we're supposed to
Right.
walk it and
Correct.
report those things.
I feel like the monitoring needs to be done by this group, not thrown out for other people to get in the middle of that.
No, I agree. But
I mean, I
But,
was,
we're looking at first off, the idea is that, okay, you want to try with a small group to see how it works, and then we can kind of you can use that as the model that you're going to use for other groups,
right?
on one hand. By the same token, you want to have this organized and eventually what you're going to do, you're going to have you're going to have groups assigned, okay? So the Boy Scouts may stick with that one little spot that they started, and that's going to be theirs. Okay, Rotary may go to, like the north end by the new open space property that we have off of Meridian there, off of Horse Mill. You got another group that might be doing the Meridian Woods. I mean,
Well,
so
I
we
mean,
can.
if you model it off of the state highway program,
Right,
you essentially quote own a section of it, and you do your thing on it. And I mean, and we can get outside of groups. We can get into businesses taking a
Right.
chunk, and for that in return they get their name on
right,
maybe a plaque, or they get recognition somehow
right.
in terms of what they're doing and how they're doing it. So there's a lot of things you can do, but yeah.
Well, I think, Bert, you did send, or at least like some guidelines that that we had from the past. Am I correct in that or not?
Yeah, Cliff and I kind of started the Friends of Grosville
Natural area.
natural areas.
Right.
And
Yeah, I think we have enough to start a trial program, so to speak. I don't think we have enough to roll it out to 20 different groups
Right,
and say
I agree.
let's go yeehaw.
Right.
I have a bit of a different approach on that. We are blessed in this community not to have a lot of litter and junk, with the exception of the area that was taken out on Meridian, where the Scouts were a big part in
Right.
spending about 4 hours and filling pretty much a 30-yard dumpster. I look at, when I drive the island, and we all do, I don't see the litter, the roadside refuse, or even along or inside the trails. I know, Bill, when you and I and Mr. Geist walked the trail, the new trail between East River and Meridian, and I walked it after that a second and even a third time, I did not see a lot of litter there. So I understand the concept of adopt a trail. I think perhaps, and we've spoken about the liaisons for bicycle pedestrian, and you as the chair and Brian Pollock as the chair of BPAC, and working with the Conservancy, the chair of the Conservancy, sitting down and having coffee maybe every quarter and trying to sort things out. During one of those sessions, I think it might be very worthwhile to talk to the director of the Kiwanis Island Cleanup Program and define what kind of a problem we have first, and then reach out to either be involved in that with this committee, or with asking the Scouts to do specific things. Years ago, when the 33rd District Court had a workers program, Pam Frucci used to actually make a recommendation that we need to hit Meridian between Parkway and Grow Road because there's a lot of litter there. I'm not suggesting it's inappropriate to proceed as we're talking about, but I think it might be more effective to work in conjunction with, and we've seen Conservancy, we've got the River Keeper, Bob Burns, what he does out there, as well as what the Kiwanis does. And I think given the minimal amount of trash along our paths and bikeways, and knock on wood,
Right.
all of that kind of stuff, I don't know that the most expedient way is to have an adopt a plot. I like it, but those seem to be, as I make my observations, in higher traffic areas. And people that are using our paths don't seem to be going back there and dumping tires, throwing litter out, and having the McDonald's wrappers there. So I'm wondering if maybe the first thing to do would be to talk with the Kiwanis and maybe the service organizations that were supporting that. So we then can define how much are you picking up every year, what are you finding, and what are the hot spots. And then if we can identify our areas,
Check on that.
maybe we do that, as opposed to asking the Boy Scouts to do on the north end, and I hate to keep picking
Right.
up on the wildlife area, but there's a trash barrel there that, wow, it's a testament to some of the things that, and I'm not going to say kids because there's adults that use it up there, but wow, that trash barrel has all kinds of things in it that I think that probably belong there.
Yes.
But that's an unusual place. And I don't know that if we were to put trash barrels out, maybe at the beginning of each of the trailheads, that might actually help us
Help
get there,
too,
or whether
sure.
that's even a beginning. But I would like to see us start with the Kiwanis and see what they've come up with.
Do we know who the head of the Kiwanis Island cleanup was that? Because I can contact him or her.
I think it was Kelly Fusinski. Kelly and Keith.
How do you spell the last name?
Fusinski.
Okay. I will contact, how about, you want, does that, I mean, that seem
Yes,
reasonable?
that
The
sounds
concept
like a good
of-
start.
So is the concept of adopt a trail only for the purpose of cleaning up garbage?
Well, I think it serves, if I may respond to that, I think it serves three purposes. Number one, garbage patrol, if you will. That's one thing. The second would be encroachment by neighboring landowners, or even people that are going back there using materials to build tree houses or something like that. And the third thing would be deadfall. What we have previously done is had each member be responsible for a particular trail or group. As an example, when it dries out, I'm going to go back and look at the ferry gauge and what the ditch looks like from south of Island that has relieved a lot of the water problems. And I think if each of us could do that a couple of times a year, we could stay on top of the encroachments. We could hopefully stay on top of the litter. And I'd like to know about tree falls down there as well.
I think the other component to that is that, and you're right, Theresa, the encroachment part or the enforcement part of this, it has to be under our like direction, or at least under our, you can give them the freedom, like this is going to be your area, but it also, there should be communication as to, okay, what issues do you find? What is the problem? That's not hard, So if you had the Kiwanis do the Meridian Woods, I mean, they would at least say, okay, communicate with Ray Geist and myself, for example, that, hey, these are some of the issues we saw. Okay, send us a quick email and say, we're doing this, or we would join them on the day that we would, that wouldn't be hard. Okay, so if it's that one day a month that it's in your area that you govern in a sense, or you're stewarding, that would happen. So, but there's a lot of, that's what I'm saying. So this is when you talk about a rollout, we're not ready for, Cliff, all due respect, not ready for June. Okay, but I think but we need to make some of these, that's why we're having a discussion, need to make some motion on this, because we do know, there is issues with deadfall. There is always issue. And luckily, and I'll knock on a lot of wood, there's not a lot of trash, which is a good thing. There's not a lot of excessive dumping of material on open space. I don't know, what I'm saying, or things of that, but I think we're just looking for other ways to involve more people in helping to keep Grosse-Ile, a healthy, happy, desirable place. So, the people can be proud of, and and we are. I mean, but can we do a better job? Yeah, I think we can. So any further discussion on that? I don't need to belabor it, but I think it's, so I would it be prudent on my part to contact, is this the Fusinskis? Would make
Fusinski.
those at least as a start, or at least the Kiwanis who did the island cleanup, and then try to work it back that way. And then we can also If we have to work on it over the summer, or we have to at least we have some of the, work that Bert and Cliff have done in the past. You already have some of the parameters that are set forth. And so we can it's just a question of, okay, where do we go from here? And so we can do that. So maybe at the June meeting, I'll come back in June and say, well, I've talked to Qantas, here's what they're suggesting, so.
Chairman, what I would I'm sorry, Mr. St. Pierre.
Go ahead.
No. What I was just going to say is recommend that previously we've each had responsibility for walking through and taking notice of what's going on with a particular trail and recognizing it's still very wet right now. But I would hope that we could, each of us, look at a particular trail, be assigned to that, and come back maybe in June, in the June meeting, if we're going to have a meeting where we can do that. Come back, as an example, Ferry Gauge Trail is there, but I also want to take a look at the ditching that's been done. You live on the Meridian, and you're in Meridian probably about as much as the squirrels and the raccoons are back there in that woods.
Maybe not as
I know
much
you
as
spend a lot of time there.
Yes, I do.
So, and if somebody else wants to take maybe the north end and we have other areas, that would be fine.
I think people have been assigned. I think we know. Yeah. So that may behoove us to
Yes.
to get out and to do that assessment.
Well, I try to do it on my street, on my dead-end street. When I walk, I try to clean up the culverts, which are often very trashed.
I'm trying to remember where you live, Mandy.
I live on the west side of Whitehall in a
Oh, okay.
dead end.
Yeah.
And it's a very small street, but I get really disgusted just taking a short walk at how much stuff. And, I got in an argument with a neighbor, well, I have MS and, I can't do this. And, well, your husband, is standing right here, I mean, it's just like little things like the garbage, just on streets, in your community.
Right.
So.
Well, ultimately, if everybody just don't trash it in the first place. Secondly, pick up after yourself. Okay, monitor what's going on in your own backyard. I mean,
Yes.
it'd be a lot easier, and the place would be a lot better.
Pam Frucci used to say that trash begets trash. When people see trash
Yeah.
laying around,
Yeah.
then they don't care.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
for what it's worth, Mandy, my money would be on you in that argument.
Yes. Good. So anything else on adopt the plot? Okay, so we have at least some direction where we're going on that, and we'll
That's-
try to
that
move. I'll bring
sounds
it back
really
to
good.
June.
Bill, why don't
Start.
you send out an email to remind us of which
Yes,
trails we're
I will.
responsible for?
I will do that.
And,
Okay, I'll get
just-
that out
and I will
too.
be not at the meeting in June. We're out of town.
Yes, that's fine, but even so. But between now and then, yeah, get out there. Which brings us to our third discussion item about encroachment enforcement. And I know Mandy had some questions and comment, and I think Carl at
does too.
least sent everybody an email as to the process that has been followed in the past.
Yes.
Mandy wanted to put him in jail, and I suggested we talk to him first.
No.
Due process
No.
is a very important concept here. But yes, do you want?
No, I want, Mandy brought it up. I think she
Yeah.
should.
Okay.
Well, I went yesterday to see where this specific issue that the Conservancy member Doug Thiel is very, very concerned about, because he lives near there and walks a lot. And it's where open space, borders 3rd Street, 4th Street, 5th Street off of Bellevue.
Yeah.
And there are two houses at the end of 4th Street, one of which has a business which was encroaching all over the open space, but has since been cleaned up, and I think that was the property that Carl may have been referring to, that the zoning enforcement officer took care of and told them, this is not, you can't use this space for your business.
Right.
I think that was the house, although I haven't talked to Carl about it. The house across the street, it's been ongoing since last fall. They have on the open space, they have a picnic table, tables, a shed, they're using it as their property, you know, for their outside enjoyment and for their storage. And,
Well, it's up to the code enforcement officer to go in and, first of all, give them a verbal warning,
Yeah.
suggestion, and if they don't clean it up, it'll be written, and then they'll be ticketed.
okay. Well,
That's the
our,
procedure.
the concern has been that this has been ongoing since, last fall, and nothing's been done about it.
Well, then,
I have the address.
all
too.
we have to do is get in touch with the code enforcement officer, get them out there and tell them this is not acceptable, and we want this thing cleaned up by such and such a date. And that's the way you do
If you
it.
have, right.
Mandy, if you'd be kind enough to give me the addresses
I'll
and
give you the
locations,
address.
I can go to the community development tomorrow. I have a standing meeting on Wednesday mornings
Okay,
in the
that'd be
building.
great.
If you have those, I can then go ahead and drop those off. And Tony Gray used to be our ordinance
Right.
officer.
Yeah.
And
Right.
Tony, you could send to just about anywhere, and he'd put oil on the waters and calm everybody down. Julie has recently been
Yes,
assigned
that's right.
that.
I keep forgetting that Julie's the
Yeah.
enforcement officer. I
And
keep
she
forgetting
has
that.
she has some good skills too with
Yeah,
with
she does.
people. And basically we start out with, hey, a warning, and then if it persists, you've got X amount of days. I'm going to throw 30 days out there.
Okay.
And if you don't pull it out within 30 days, then we start doing the citation. You go down and explain it to Judge Coleman Hassan or Judge McNally.
Okay.
And
That
which I
sounds
wouldn't want to do
great.
with either of them. And been in front of them, and they take this stuff seriously.
Excellent. That's good to hear. I'll tell Doug that, and that, you know, I'll give you the address.
Right.
It'd be wonderful.
I should
And
just lost
if
it.
Doug knows the township manager at all, he could
Yes,
probably
he
make a
does.
similar call to that effect. So,
Yeah.
but
Is there in the policy of open space, things laid out about, how to treat open space? You know, I was wondering, just looking back there, is why there aren't signs there at the end of those streets off of Bellevue to say open space property? Or maybe a couple markers, because I don't know if they even know about it. I assume that, you know, some of them do, but, I mean, wouldn't that be a bit of a deterrent? Maybe a little bit more education to the community about what open space is all about? People see space that isn't being used.
Right.
It's for their use. It's, you know, but public domain is what happens with it, so.
I don't know any of the people directly involved in that. I know the one resident, I believe it was 4th Street, as soon as it was brought to his attention, stopped the mowing and everything
Yeah.
seemed to, it was a simple case of here's where your property line is and here's where the Greenways open space is, and we need to respect each other's boundaries, if you will. So many times, and that's the problem, it's similar to what Pam used to say about litter. If you have an encroachment on, I'm just going to throw out Green Street as an example. Well, not only does the neighbor across the street see the encroachment and nothing happen, well, then they have a neighborhood party or others come in, and now the people on Red Street and Yellow Street, you know, this is a great thing. I've got all this property here. I had a friend that lived near Fife Lake, and I asked him, how many acres do you have? And he said 610. I said, what do you mean? He said, I got 10 on my own, and the 600 that is state land that borders it.
Yeah.
So many times I think you get the idea that, well, I'm just going to use a foot or 2 feet or 3 feet. And then there are those few that have the idea it is better to ask forgiveness than to ask permission. And I think that's some of the situation that you're talking about.
Okay,
So
yeah,
we
I would
could very
agree.
easily, but it's a problem of having eyeballs on the problem. And
Well, the
But
neighbors
what about
on,
signs and board and markers, just so to be, when it borders up to neighborhoods the way this open space does, you know,
We
to,
used to have signs that says, in other words, there's a $500 fine for dumping trash on open spaces.
need
What
to,
happened to those signs?
I don't know. Some of them have been removed because there was one down off on Meridian.
Yeah.
But I know,
And
see,
that's-
part of, I think, but the other piece to this too is that if we if you put a sign on every open space things, you're gonna keep the sign companies in a lot of business, and we're gonna run out of money in a hurry, because there's a lot of, there's 600 and some acres, okay, 603 now,
Right.
.01 acres that are under, under open space. But, yeah, partly it's a question of if we, as the Open Space Greenways Committee, get out there and see these things, and then obviously we can assist in the enforcement or help in the enforcement, okay? That's number one. Number two, it's just a question. I don't think you can put signs on every.
No, not everywhere,
No,
but like when it
but
backs
think
up
about
to a
it,
community.
but backs up into neighborhoods. I mean, take a look. So you're gonna run a sign all the way, the property across, where, let's say, all up and down Manchester, because that's open space.
The property behind Manchester to Bellevue.
On Manchester to the Centennial Farm, and so you've got
Oh.
all those cul-de-sacs, and you have all, so it's a question of, I mean, people, maybe know that, but maybe they need to be reminded.
Some kind of reminder.
Right.
I think a philosophical question that comes in there is if you put signs up there, and I want to take your position a little bit further, Mandy, that if we put, no trespassing signs, or what kind of signs do we put down there? I don't know that we want to be in a position of deterring people from going into open space. My concern is the encroachment itself. If they want to walk through there,
Proper
if
use.
Bill Stevenson and his dog want to take a walk out of their backyard and go, and I don't mean to pick on you, Bill,
No,
but
that's fine.
you're an adjoining property
Right.
owner, as is Theresa. And if you go ahead and use the property, you should, but it's
Just for the encroachment.
it's similar, leave only footprints and take only pictures.
Right.
Motto that the national parks, many of the national parks have. And signs disappear, for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, right.
And I think a letter sometimes, or a knock on the door, if the letter didn't reach someone who could appreciate what the problem is pretty good. I'm just loath to start putting out, do not trespass signs. And if somebody's that
Well, I was thinking more
difficult.
just like open space. This is open space. Just identify it as open,
Right.
not a trespassing, but this
No,
is
I know what you're saying, but,
that's fine.
but,
Well, I would think the some of the best protectors of open space are the people who live adjoining to it, and so I mean, if you had a list of that identified all those houses, you could send out a letter once a year. And you could also encourage them to participate more in the open space.
I like
Yes.
that.
You could
No?
you could word the letter such that it's encouraging them to take additional ownership, but also understand the rules and the bylaws of the open space, because they need to do that. They need to understand those bylaws in order to, protect the open space.
I like that.
Asking for their help, I think,
very good
is
approach.
a better idea than just,
Well,
Right.
I mean, there's just some options that we
No,
should
I'm,
think
I'm,
about
I'm taking notes.
concerning this.
Bert, you had
I like
something
that.
you were gonna say before? I do like
Yeah.
that a lot. I think we can identify that.
Well, a couple things. One, in a letter that we sent to all the adjoining neighbors of open space, we could say, welcome to the Friends of Open Space. And kind of, essentially sign them up. And, or have something that they would have to return, or an email that they would return saying, they were interested. So that's one thing. The other thing is we're talking about updating the guide to the natural areas.
Right.
So when we do that, that's another opportunity to publicize it and have those available at Kroger and other places.
has the Conservancy thought of doing, I mean, like redoing that, or how was that handled in the past? It was a joint effort, was it not? Or did you do the whole thing, or how?
Cliff and I worked on it, and Greg Roginski, who is kind of the map guy from the Conservancy, he updated the map, and Open Space paid for it.
Ah, okay. Okay, good.
Has it changed enough to justify a redo of the open space brochure?
I think it has.
Yeah, I think it has. I mean, in one of our last meetings, we were talking about that's one of our goals, only because the Nature Conservancy now has maybe acquired more property. We have Open Space have acquired more property.
Added trails too.
We've added trails that we haven't, this trail is not here, this year it's now over here. I mean, there's a lot of different, so that could be very
What I
what, so.
would suggest is that you and I pick a time that's convenient for you and for me as well, and just like we did at the kitchen table, we prepared an updated program, and it was hugely successful because it was a joint effort
Right,
between the two groups.
absolutely. Mandy, you may want to be involved in that.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? Yes.
absolutely.
Good. Any more on encroachment enforcement? Okay. Just a reminder, and I guess we'll have to maybe talk a little bit about this in terms of like we are going to have I don't know what your vision of this is. That's maybe why I put it on as a discussion item. Ribbon cutting ceremony on June 10th for the two new trails, the Ferry Gauge Trail, that is one of our, a new trail, certainly, that's being used. So even though it's, it's new, people are using it. There's still some area maybe that needs to be cleaned up a little bit and taken care of. But also the East River connector to the Meridian Woods Trail that is there, that's also being used pretty extensively. I mean, what's your vision for, how how big you want this, or how small? I mean, what's the idea? I mean, we can put
Well, parking on Ferry is terrible.
parking yeah, right.
Especially now with the bridge closed, ferry is impossible. I mean, driving down it, it's such a narrow street, and there's so
Right.
much more traffic on it
More
now.
traffic, right.
I live there and I agree with her completely.
Should we postpone this or wait? I mean, wait until the fall, or do we simply do?
When will Meridian be completed?
Not until like October, November, I thought.
November, I heard, yeah.
Really?
Right,
Yeah,
yeah, late fall.
Yikes.
Yeah.
yeah, it's been
That is a
awful.
long time.
I mean, a ribbon cutting ceremony is many a politician and business person knows, it doesn't necessarily have to be, you're not inviting the whole island, okay, but it's more of a ceremonial photo op, I believe, for people to know, and it's also symbolic, okay, because it has given people a sense that this has now been completed. This is the work that we have done to this point, and now we want you to responsibly enjoy it. So, I mean, that's my thought.
I
And
don't think you're gonna get.
we take some pictures and get it in the paper, or get it in the News Herald and the Free Press or wherever, but
I think you're not gonna get 50 or 100 people.
no.
Right.
But, I think also that the majority of people that are going to be there are going to be involved with the township of one form or another. And so maybe you just all meet here and drive down there with, one vehicle or a
Right.
van or something. Or you pick, somebody's driveway on Ferry Road and you
Right.
park in there.
Park at Carl's house and
And,
Should we
you know,
have
I
it on
don't-
June 10th?
what's that?
Should we have it on June 10th or not?
I don't
think
see
we
why
can do it
not.
on
Yeah.
June 10th, don't you still think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
the reality is if you had if you had a, tree fall close to the road or something, you would take half the road and you would block it off and you would, you would get by.
Right.
So, it's, you're not talking hours and hours, you're talking an hour
this is
event.
Not even that.
Yeah,
And
there
so-
is the option of,
Right.
there's the option of parking on Lowry, which was maybe a 2-block walk to the
Right,
head of the
That would be
ferry.
hard, right.
I think we should have it on June 10th, providing it's gonna be a nice day on June 10th.
Well, yes,
Sure it won't be.
So
that's
let's-
right.
let's-
It's gonna be a nice day.
I proclaim that June 10th will be
And what,
beautiful
I
and
think
sunny.
June 10th, is that a Sunday?
We'll
I think it's a
schedule.
Sunday. June 10th is Sunday. I don't have my phone handy.
Saturday.
That's a Saturday?
Saturday, June 9th then?
No, it's the 10th.
Is it-
Yeah, it's a
No,
Saturday.
the only
June
thing
9th
there,
is what, June 10th is on a Saturday?
Yeah,
Right.
Okay.
So we'll
Let's
have it
have
on a Saturday.
Let's have it on a Saturday.
That's
June-
why we're having it, yeah.
the only thing I would bring to the committee's attention is that just received an invitation for a graduation party
Ah.
for John Kime's daughter.
Right.
Normally, you would look at that and say that's, private affair, but John has been very instrumental in supporting this, and if we can work it later in the day, perhaps
Right.
3 o'clock or 4 o'clock,
yeah,
something like
that's-
that might be
Right, that
easier.
would be fine.
Okay,
Recognizing frankly recognizing his contribution.
okay, 3
Absolutely.
o'clock PM on June 10th, on a
4
Saturday.
o'clock?
what time?
4
Uh,
o'clock. What
Could
works
we do-
better for you?
Could
4?
we do 4 o'clock?
We'll do it
Do
for
a
4
graduation
o'clock,
party
okay.
there?
Yeah, I would think. So he has a graduation party on June 10th?
I believe that is the correct, I just got the invitation.
But I'm just saying, obviously, could we not have it in the morning?
Well, that'd be
I
fine.
mean, that might
10 o'clock?
make it easier.
Have it on
That's true.
Sunday.
Or, yeah.
That
Are we
would
doing
leave-
this so John
Yeah,
can
10
attend?
o'clock might be better because
Yes.
it would
He's
leave,
been a big part of this.
Right,
it
right,
would
right.
Yeah,
leave
very much so.
the rest of the day for us to do whatever else we have to do. Is it-
Right.
I'm fine with
I'm okay with 10 o'clock. Are
10
you okay
o'clock
with
it
10
is,
o'clock?
okay, all right.
Cliff says 10. Okay. We're good. Oh, we won't keep them long. We won't keep them long. We won't keep people long. Believe me.
Right.
No long speeches,
Yeah.
Cliff. Carl, Bill. Okay. All right. So 10 o'clock, June 10th. Mark your calendars for, the buses I'm sure will be circling the parking lot for people to gather, but we'll see what we can do for you. One of our goals this year is to do a better job in terms of reaching out and involving the schools. So we're going to, and I realize schools are ending, but there's been a disconnect here for many reasons, and we're not chastising them too much publicly, but I know one of the things we're going to have to do, obviously for the fall, is to work with them more so we can get involved them. Carl, you have anything from the township in addition or further that we need to know about or be aware of?
Just a little bit of thanks to Donna Deppa and John Kime and the entire staff at Community Development that's been involved in helping us with Dump the Junk as they do every year. John and Donna, I think Donna is not going to be there this year. I believe she has a prior commitment, but she has been absolutely wonderful. In my experience, and Bill, you've spoken very, very highly of her, motivated, organized, and she manages to put everything together, including the dumpsters and all of the areas that we need to have sorted out for metal or timber or brush and things like that. So Donna, thank you again. And John Kime, thank you, and your crew for coming over there.
Very much so.
That's the only thing that I would add. One perhaps addition would be the contract has been let for the extension of the bike path between Grow Road and Gibraltar Bay. So we expect to
Oh,
have
really?
that fence in by the
That's cool.
by the end of summer and hopefully sooner. So
Oh,
the
that's
project
great
is for
news.
Labor Day. And,
Oh, awesome.
I was just.
Tell Liz Hugel that.
Oh, it's great, and I was just contacted by a citizen that lives in the area that I've known for a long time and said, when is that gonna be up? Because that is such a hazard to anybody walking and biking along
Yeah,
East River,
yeah.
so
Oh, that's
right.
great.
that's gonna make the island a little better place, a little safer place.
Yes.
All right, and let alone that stretch of road that goes that way, how difficult that is
Oh,
if you're
yeah.
riding a bike or even, driving your car down that way. So, yes, we know that.
That's all I have from the township.
Good, thank you, Carl, very much. And I know, we'll be talking with the township about the requests for the environmental study and their use of township property in the Lowry cutout.
I've got Derek convinced he needs to have you on his speed dial, so that's a
Okay,
good
well,
thing.
that's okay. Well, I know his number. Okay. Mandy, you have anything from the Grosse Nature and Land
No,
Conservancy?
just a couple things. Some of it's kind of repetitious. The scholarship deadline has come and passed, and Bert has been working on that. A winner has been declared for the. Nope. Nope.
The winner has been decided but not declared.
Oh, it has been
right.
decided.
Right, so that winner will be announced on May 25th on the streaming, live
okay.
stream of the whole scholarship
Right.
event.
Yes, yeah, it's not.
Sorry for
not
the wrong
public
wordage.
consumption.
Do you have any hints to give?
Oh, can't.
The winner is a Grosse High School senior.
It narrows it down.
The Ticket Outside Photo Contest finishes May 11th. Earth Day, the Conservancy participated in the All Island Cleanup, focusing on the Nature Conservancy preserves. The education team worked with a Girl Scout troop 77539 to conduct a cleanup at the Gibraltar Bay Unit, Sunrise Park, and behind CVS.
Wow,
Excellent. I didn't know they did all that.
yes.
Hennepin Marsh Gateway down at the north end, past bridge. They've worked really hard removing invasive species and dead trees at Hennepin. The stewardship team has made a lot of progress.
I saw that.
Yeah,
It's like
it's,
pretty
they really
remarkable.
went for it, get rid of all the invasive species. The stewardship team thinks it'll be several years before the restoration work at the preserve is completed. Sunrise Park at the end of Parkway. The spotting scope and kayak slide rope were installed at the park for the full season. The Resource Center on Macomb Street, the former Salon Sigrid's, work continues with the renovations, and that we anticipate completion in the fall of 2023. We have our own Resource Center on Macomb Street. The new signs, speaking of signs, we've begun installing the new ones, about 10 of them on our preserves, including the new Bruce Jones and William Heinrich preserves, 2 different places, but these 2 have signs on them. Actually saw the one on the Bruce Jones, at the corner of Bridge and Meridian.
Nice.
Spring letter's been distributed. The May event is coming up. There's so much going on this weekend. Is this Sunday, May 7th, at the Airport Natural Area, or the GBU, depending on what you choose to call it. The time is 8 o'clock to 9:30 in the morning this Sunday. Aaron will lead a spring walk focused on the peak week for arriving songbirds. We'll look and listen to warblers, thrushes, vireos, tanagers, and more. No birding experience is required, though if you own binoculars, please bring them along. So that's the May
Good.
event.
Can I have these?
Yes.
Good, good, thank you. Excellent. Teresa, anything on, the Pam isn't here, anything on the welcome letters? Nothing, okay. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. But hearing none, does anybody have anything else for the good of the cause?
Maybe we should check in and see what's going on with Pam.
Yeah, we haven't,
Somebody
No?
call her.
I know. thought she was supposed to be back like in the May.
I'll
That's
give
what
her
I
a call.
thought.
I've
I
been,
do
I've
know
been
that
wondering.
we are, and Carl, in one of your earlier comments, we're trying to set up a time with both the liaisons to the bicycle pedestrian and the recreation department and Greenways open space to sit down and have a little powwow, or at least a little coffee, to talk about like some common goals and common, how we can help each other in terms of their, not only the efficiency of the committees that we have, but also some of our common goals that we want to succeed. So that's going to happen, I think, soon. So there was,
I'm sorry, Bill, with-
Jameson Yeager was out of town until the 30th of April, and now it's just,
Who's it with? Township?
I think,
Yeah, what we had tossed around kind of loosely, and there hasn't been any general, I think until we actually sit down and have coffee and people get a chance to go face to face, but we were looking at Brian Pollock with the Pedestrian Advisory Commission, as well as his liaison, Jameson Yeager. The idea was that we would have the benefit of whatever projects they're thinking about that would also spill over into Greenways open space. And we were looking at getting the Conservancy involved too, because there seems to be, at least if you remember geometry, a subset of interest by all three of those.
Right.
As an example, Brian Pollock is the chair of Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Commission, happens to be the mobility and thinking pedestrian and bicycle for Wayne County. He's the person that does that. So if we were to proceed with a limited path and a vista on that area we had spoken of earlier, just across from Lowry, the bike path trail, bike path is on the east side of Meridian, and to go from that path to the west side, you have to traverse Meridian, and there are certain safety features that Brian is absolutely an expert on. Wouldn't cost us anything, and he could tell us whether you use signs or whether you're able to do it with stripes on the roadway, or how you proceed. But to do that in a safe manner, particularly when you should expect that there would be children riding bicycles and wanting to do something like
Right.
that.
Crossing Meridian.
So it's an attempt to take the talents and skills of those three groups that have that community of interest, where we can meld those together and say, hey, Brian, what do you think about this? Or Brian might say, you know, it seems like we could use a path here, or Greenways open space might have something to offer. The Conservancy, as an example.
Yeah,
So
great.
just a chance to try and harness everybody in the same direction.
Makes sense. Because
See how it works out.
good. Anything else? I would entertain a motion to adjourn at this time. Adjourned at 8:35.
I think this is air conditioning up here.
So moved.